Supreme Magus, Chapter 70. A Third Specialization. Professor Laika opened a desk drawer filled to the brim with cheap-looking pendants. "We buy them in stocks, just like the rings," she said, picking one at random. "The only way to differentiate the various rings is by the stones embedded within: red for dimensional items, blue for Tier 1 magic storing rings, yellow for Tier 2, green for Tier 3. Tier 4 magic storing rings and above are not available in the price halls. As it is just your average silver pendant." She placed it at the center of the innermost magic circle, and after that she called for help via her communication amulet and waited for assistance to come. Fun fact: the dimensional amulets are usually preferred to dimensional rings, since most mages prefer to have as many magic storing rings as they can. We still have to discover a way to use something other than rings for instant casting. The door of the classroom opened. A man and a woman dressed like the academy staff stepped in and took place behind the magical circle, starting to chant the same spell. With each cast, the space within the circle was filled with pure non-elemental mana, to the point that the air inside started to crackle and pop with power. The energy became dense enough to lit up the amulet from the table. To use a blacksmith analogy, the circle acts as a magical furnace, withholding the stored mana within and saturating the item that had to be enchanted. The circle must be perfect, or the mana would leak, leading to a defective product. She explained, "The higher the mana density one creates, the better the item will be. But that also means that the Forge Master will consume a greater amount of mana for the enchantment. If the Forge Mastering spell used is weaker than the mana accumulated inside the circle, it will have no effect. A true Forge Master must always be aware of her limits or his limits. Balance is of the most importance in our line of work. If the mana density is too low, the item will be useless. Too high, and it costs so much to not have a market value, unless you do it for yourself, of course." When the assistants stopped chanting, Laika stepped forward, gesturing the students to move away. Then she started casting several consecutive spells. Both her hands and her voice almost never stopped. One by one, the runes that Lid had drawn between the circles started moving from their original positions, taking place around the amulet. They formed an energy sphere, absorbing the mana from the surrounding space and injecting it in the amulet. When the last rune completed the sphere, all the available mana had been compressed to the point of being barely able to enclose the pendant. With the final spell, Laika fused the sphere with the amulet. The runes shine on its surface for a few seconds before disappearing forever. Only then she took the amulet in her hand, showing the class the results of her efforts. "This little thing here is a top quality dimensional amulet. Its value is about 340 points in the price hall and above 300 gold coins if you were to buy it with cash." The idea of so much money condensed in such a little thing made even those born in wealthy families gasp in amazement. It was enough to build a manor and buy its land. Furniture and pieces of art to furnish it would take at least another amulet though. Now, here are a few things that books don't explain and that you may have missed during the whole process. I'm especially referring to those that paid more attention to my chest rising and lowering rather than to my brilliant performance. She glared to some of the male students whose faces turned into a bright purple while squealing excuses and apologies. Lid felt compassion for them. If it was Nalier instead of her, he would probably be in their shoes. The female students instead made fun of them, calling them perverts and other non-endearing terms. Professor Laika was fuming. There was only so much she was willing to bear, even from teenagers. She took pride in her talent and deep expertise. Being treated like a slab of meat was the worst insult anyone could do to her. She covered her chest with her arms before taking a deep breath to calm down in order to continue. Not everyone is able to become a forge master. That's because, together with the war mage, is the specialization that requires the greatest mana capacity. While for a war mage, it determines how much destruction they can bring. Without a huge amount of mana, a forge master cannot create the most powerful enchanted items in our repertoire. Mana capacity is needed, not only to overcome the high mana density required for a great item, but also because every single rune requires its own spell to be engraved in the object. Each spell is relatively simple and short, but you must need to be able to cast them in a rapid succession without delay. This because as soon as the magical furnace is loaded, the mana tries to escape, and even a perfect circle can only hold on for a while. Usually, after 10 seconds, the circle destabilizes and the mana begins to leak. This means that I had to cast 13 spells, one for each rune, plus another to permanently imprint the energies in the amulet, for a total of 14 spells. Each of them was able to overcome the mana density, and I had to do everything within 10 seconds, or I would have just wasted a lot of mana for nothing. Bear in mind that once an object is saturated by mana, if the forge mastering process fails, it cannot be repeated. The energy remnants from the previous failure would still linger, making any further attempts a waste of time. Even this castle is the product of the work of countless forge masters. Every single stone has been enchanted before assembling them as you see it today. Otherwise, it would be impossible to imbue with magic something this big. And that is just the first requirement. The second is that a forge master must be a jack of all trades, no matter if she or he is a master of none. In my line of work, I need to be proficient in all the 6 elements. You will also need patience, love for research, and a strong build. Manipulating this magnitude of energy is not something pipsqueaks can afford to do, not without incurring in permanent damages that would accumulate over time. Lid rose his hand. Yes, I can understand most of the items I saw in the prize hall and link their properties with 6 elements. But I don't get how warp steps and dimensional items work. What element do they belong to? Excellent question. The answer is to all of them. The only force that can bend space and time is gravity. Powerful forge masters of the past discovered that air and earth magic are the bare minimum to create such powerful gravity. But to stabilize it, to make such items not only reproducible but also to allow fine control over them, all elements were required. It's a field of research that has never gone dry. There are still so many things to explain. I think I understand, Lee thought. They need the electromagnetic waves from the lightning to resonate with the gravitational pull Earth magic generates and enhance it to bend time and space. Fire and water magic probably allow to avoid side effects like the formations of vacuum, overheating, or freezing while creating such powerful gravitational force. I can't even fathom that darkness and light are used for, though. They didn't exist back on Earth. Science can help me with them. During the rest of the lesson, Professor Laika proceeded to explain how they would manage the rest of the course. She couldn't allow any of them inside the training hall again until they have learned the theory behind forge mastering. Having students messing around with magic circles was too dangerous, since high-density mana was highly volatile and could cause huge explosions if not controlled properly. After that, they would need to memorize all the basic runes and how to combine them until being able to produce all the basic enchanted items. Only those who passed all the tests would be admitted to the 5th year, learning how to add multiple properties to a single item. By the end of the lesson, Lit was fuming like a volcano ready to explode. Being in the first row helped him to better understand Professor Laika's teachings, noticing the final details about how to draw runes. At the same time, though, he was also able to feel the pressure coming from all his classmates standing behind him. In normal conditions, he would find disgusting the idea of being surrounded by strangers, hearing their whispers and being the subjects to their glares. Yet he would bear it all. But since his mana core and body were at odds, constantly fighting and messing with his mind, it was much harder for him to control his reactions and hide his emotions. It was Solo's voice and presence that helped him praying and paying them no need, using their bond to soothe his most violent reactions. So in the last 2 hours, though, they had been separated, and now Lit was forced to wait for her outside the training hall since the master alchemist lesson had yet to finish. It was really irritating for him standing alone in a crowd for the umpteenth time since his first life. Even during high school, Lit had been always different from his peers, focused on paying the bills instead of goofing around. Seeing their carefree attitude, how easy it was for them to relax and make friends, made him grin with envy. Suddenly, the alchemist training hall opened, and a small insect came out of it, reaching Lit's leg unnoticed and then turning into a liquid, going back towards his hand. Sorry, it took so long, but everyone made so many questions that the professor forced everyone to stay behind. Want to grab something to eat? Solus asked.